DJC Productions proudly presents The Dusty Cover Show. Hear the inside story from today's authors, plus free chapter downloads. Kindly promoted by Lady Lake Artist Promotion and Publicity for artists and bands in the US and UK. And now, here's Dusty Cover.
Yay! Welcome to the Dusty Cover Show. And thank you all for tuning in and sharing. My guest today is the awesome Sean Douglas from the Codpass, and I'll be chatting to him straight after this song. This is Grayscale by Desdemona. today I'm very honoured to have a very special guest, Sean Douglas, who's the founder of the Codcast. And he's an amazing person. He was the finalist of the Best Podcast Online Producer in the Radio Production Awards. And he is a great advocate for dyslexics like myself. So welcome, Sean, to the Dusty Cover Show.
Thanks for having me on the show.
I know that your website has a lot book blogs as well as everything, and you really specialise in helping students and adults with dyslexia, which is quite a fresh approach because there's lots of help. Being a dyslexic myself, there's lots of help for children these days, but there's not so much for adults and students in higher education. So how did you come up with that idea to do this? Because you've really gone at it with an amazing amount of energy and resources and speed and everything. So how did you come up with the initial idea for the Codcast?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm dyslexic myself, and I'd kind of had ups and downs with dyslexia throughout my schooling and career. But it was never a massive problem until I got kind of in my 30s and had an incident at work where I was pretty much pushed out the door because I was told that I was too slow and, just wasn't good enough to do the job. And at that point, I went to look for some help. I thought, maybe getting some help with dyslexia would help me with some of these issues. And I looked around and there wasn't really anything for adults. There was loads and loads of stuff for kids, as you said, but nothing for adults. And I was into podcasting at the time. It was, one way that I loved to consume content because I didn't have to read anything. And I'd always wanted to make a podcast, but I didn't quite know what the subject matter should be. And then I thought, right, dyslexia. And I'd met some really inspirational dyslexic people, and I thought they could be really interesting to other dyslexics that might be in my position or, were in my position at school, getting kicked out of class and stuff. And just to make people realize that dyslexia doesn't have to be a barrier to doing what you want to do. And school isn't the end of the world. If you do badly in school or education, you can still be a success. And so from that, we started a once a month podcast, and that was the beginning of everything, really.
Yes, I really loved the way that you have positive stories and really inspiring stories, and I'm sure they've helped so many people, including myself. And it's really interesting because I hadn't thought of you as being dyslexic, so thank you for sharing that with Douglas. I do know quite a few people who are writers and musicians who are dyslexic but haven't come out of the closet. There's still quite a lot of negativity about people who are dyslexic, and I really admire all the work you're doing to put such a positive slant on it. And I know you've had some amazing, interesting people on your shows. Can you tell me, I know it's probably hard, can you tell me some of the favourite ones?
Yeah, I guess Peter Stringfellow, he was kind of our first celebrity guest on the show, really. And he has, such an interesting story. And I think one of the things that I really liked about his story was part of his message was that, if you do fail at stuff, if you do find things hard and you are in a place where everyone else thinks you're a failure, that's actually not a negative place to be because it gives you a lot of freedom. And that was his story. He left school at 15 with nothing and no one had any expectations of him. So he didn't have anyone to let down, and he was free to explore and do whatever he wanted to do and be, have the freedom and the kind of permission to be able to fail at stuff. And through that, he found what he was really good at. And, now he's a millionaire and has massive clubs and has had an amazing lifestyle. So I think, he's quite a controversial figure, but I think his story is great, that there's not really such a thing as failure. You can put positive spin on anything and it can be quite valuable to you. I love the story by the Wild Boy. So a guy called Brando Yelovich, who is a New Zealander, and he was dyslexic. He had ADHD as well, and he was kind of going off the rails and getting into trouble and getting in trouble with police and things. And he wanted to change his life, so he decided that he was going to call in a childhood bet, which was to walk around the coastline of New Zealand, which is about 5,000 miles. He did it, and he people think about walking around the coastline, trotting along on beaches and stuff, but he was, proper in the sea, getting bashed against rocks. He almost died 6 times. He didn't bring any food with him because he couldn't carry it. He brought a crossbow. He had to learn to hunt. He had to learn to, shoot, kill, and cook animals. He starved for days. But he made it, and he came back. and his life turned around, and he has a TV show coming out. He's got a book coming out, and his motto was that he wanted to change his life in a way that school would not be able to, and he managed that by simply walking around. It wasn't a simple walk, but it's something so different from school, but it was what enabled him to reach his full potential. And I think that is the kind of curse of dyslexia. If some people get a bit upset when you say things like curse of dyslexia or something negative, but I do think that one thing that is really negative about it is it can stop people from reaching their full potential. And I think that's the real shame about, if you don't get the right help and it's not recognized and you don't have the right positive spin on it, it can stop you from reaching your potential. But I think a lot of the stories show that it doesn't have to.
I was very interested in the last episode about the Mary Poppins on speed, about how this normal lady who understood dyslexia because she was dyslexic went in and she spoke to ordinary prisoners and she helped them and she changed their lives around. And I think you're right. I think it starts at a very young age. You can be written off, excuse the pun, quite literally, because and also you lack confidence because you can look around at your peers and they're all managing to understand it and get all of the spellings right, and you begin to wonder, or believe in yourself there's something quite wrong. And so that's what's so wonderful about all your blogs and the podcast, and I especially like your book blogs because you sort of encourage people to read, and also you're a great advocate of audiobooks. I just wonder, what type of books do you like to read or listen to, and what are you reading to or listening to at the moment?
Good point. The book blog came about because I think literature is so kind of it's such a cultural reference, really. And if you haven't read all of the books that people talk about and people refer to, you can feel a little bit left out. And some of these books, which are kind of touted as classic books, they're more like doorstops than anything. You look at them and they're 2 inches thick, and you just think, I'm never going to get through that. And I was really into science fiction and things at school, and I wanted to read stuff I really wanted to read A Brave New World and stuff for GCSE, and my teachers were just like, no, it's too hard for you. You can't read it. And it was probably, that I was 16 when I did that. And it was probably maybe 20 years later or maybe about 15 years later that I actually got round to reading it. And I didn't actually read the book. I listened to it. And, I started getting into audiobooks, and it opened a new world to me where I could just quite easily consume these books. A book that would take me a month to read, I could probably consume in 2 days, or, on a long train journey or something like that. And I just thought this is a great way to open people up to literature. But one thing that I found was, there's lots of book reviews, but they're all paperback. They're all hard copies of books. And there was nothing that really promoted audiobooks. And you've got great resources now like Audible, which are fantastic, and for a relatively small amount you can kind of have a book every month and really get on top of some of that reading that you probably want to get on top of to kind of be part of those kind of pop culture conversations. And so I created a book blog, which is an audio book review show, which is done in a podcast format, which actually brings the stories to life. And I think it's not just for people that want to listen to audiobooks. I think people that want to read hard copies can listen to a book blog and be inspired and informed about literature that they might want to read. Because again, it's a really short podcast. It's between 4 and 6 minutes, but it gives you an insight in a way that you couldn't get from reading. So that was kind of how it came about. And it's enlightened me to some really good books that I'd never have come across. With regards to what I'm reading, I don't read much. I generally listen to podcasts and stuff, but I'm reading, I've pre-ordered Ruby Wax's new book, which is called Frazzled. So as soon as I'll be reading that.
What's sort of drawn you to that book?
Ruby Wax is dyslexic. She's someone that we're trying to get on the show, or we're hoping to approach to get onto the show. And anyone that I'd like to get on the show, I try and read up about them and read stuff that they've written. And she talks a lot about mental health and things, which is not necessarily part of dyslexia, but I think some of some of the confidence issues and things, and being self-aware. She's done I think she did a master's at Oxford in mindfulness, and that's one of the things which is kind of again helping people. And so I think she talks a little bit about that in Frazzled, but she talks a lot about the issues that she's had with mental health, which is another one of those conditions that has a little bit of a taboo, that people aren't that interested or comfortable speaking about in front of people.
Yes, definitely more than a little bit of a taboo, I think. Yeah. Which is quite sad, but hopefully, the world will be more an understanding place. The thing, to go back to the audiobooks again, what I like about them, rather than just watching a video of the book that, when it's been made into a film or something, is that you're actually getting the author's authentic words. They're read as just exactly how they've been written, but then you get often, especially now, because they're increasing so much in popularity, and there's more and more proper actors doing them rather than just doing it when they're unemployed or something, and fill in. They're actually choosing to do audiobooks, like the wonderful Anna Parker Niles, who I had on my show on New Year's Eve, and had read Garden for me, which is my book, which was a huge honour. So I get to see it from both sides of the spectrum, because I wrote the book and then she read it. And so, but in a way, I got to hear it afresh. So what are you, I know you have so many plans, you have so many things, you're doing like this D-Box TV thing as well. But what are you working on at the moment, and what are you excited about?
We're just gearing up for the new year. We've got some really great guests that we've almost finalised for the show. So I'm not going to say who they are, but you'll find out next year. But we've got some really interesting people coming on the show, and we're just trying to make the content as good as possible. So it did start out as a podcast, and that's something we're really committed to, and putting a podcast out every month, and also a book blog out every month. But also one thing that's taken off, and for me is still pretty difficult to comprehend, is the blog, because I'm someone that never wanted to write anything. I got E's and F's and U's at English GCSE, and now I write a blog which puts out 3 blog articles a month, and it's something that I've started to enjoy. I've got some of the assistive tech, and I talk about assistive tech for people with dyslexia on the Dysboxing YouTube channel and YouTube show that we do. But the assistive tech has really allowed me, again, to, like I say, to reach my full potential and to kind of untap, something was blocked, the passion that I had for writing. And it was something that came out a little bit at school, but because and college, but because I was so bad at writing, or it was so difficult and frustrating and fatiguing, I didn't really go to it. But the assistive tech has helped me to write the blog. So one of the things that we're really trying to do is just trying to find that voice and really find the kind of content that people want to read. We kind of have a couple of streams of content. One is for kind of adults with dyslexia, so people in the workplace, people trying to find jobs, some of the issues that they may encounter, and then students at university, study skills, what they should be doing, how they should be maybe preparing their studies, or kind of the conversations they should be having with their tutors to help them get through university. So that's one of the things that we're really excited about, pushing forward and trying to get just the best content we can create.
Well, you're amazing and very inspirational, and I was very honoured to meet you. Thank you so much for your time. Can you share some of your links now? I know you've given a few of them, but could you share them all now?
Yeah, the best place to get all of our content is www.thecodpast.org. And you can find also our videos on YouTube. The podcast is on Stitcher, it's on SoundCloud, it's on iTunes. So, just go to any of those places and type thecodpast.org, or just go to Google and type the Codpast, and all of our stuff will come up.
Okay, thank you very much. So now I'd really like to share this awesome song with you, and I was very grateful that Shane came on to my radio show a few weeks back, and this is one of my new all-time favourite songs, Dream of You by Shane Layton.
It's only been one night of me alone. I'd call you up but you won't answer. I'd run to you and fall in your arms. somebody else is already there with you. Someone else is there. I should be there with you if it's alright. I'll dream of you tonight. I've got to find a way out of my groove. So I'll dream of you tonight. It was the hardest thing to walk away and never know how much I lost. And time might heal my broken heart. It's just right now that I really need you. It's just right now I need you. Oh God, I need you. If it's alright, I'll dream of you tonight. I've got to find a way out of my groove. So I'll dream of you. I never dream of asking, but I might never dream again. 'Cause every dream we've ever had is coming to an end. So no matter what you say, I'm gonna dream about you I've got to find a way out of my groove. So I'll dream of you. I'll dream of tonight. Dream of you tonight. Tonight. Dream of you tonight.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that song. It's one of my all-time favourites. And now I'm going to be sharing one of my favourite books by a Japanese writer called Higashi Mari. And I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but the book's called Steampunk Style and it's edited by Steampunk Oriental Laboratory. First of all, I would like to say what a delight this book is to own. The quality of the publication is awesome. There are amazing photos of the artwork and good descriptions of all of the projects that Mari makes. The majority of the art projects are for higher skill level, but there is a wide range and something for everyone, and there's inspiration in heaps. The book is a total delight to look at, with the first section filled with stunning images that will blow your mind away, literally. Steampunk fans or not, you will love this book. There's a lot of steampunk art online, but the steampunk art in this book is far superior to anything you will find, in my opinion. I was lucky enough to see some of Hiroshio Skiaki's work firsthand. Again, I apologise if I'm saying that wrong, as it was in part of an exhibition in the History of Science Museum in Oxford, where I live. There's plenty to choose from this magical book, and I'm sure you'll find it to be one of your favourites, so check it out. I'm very honoured to have Mary as my friend, because she's not only a talented artist, and she also models for many of the photographs in the book as well. There's 16 other spectacular artists who have contributed to this book, which showcases some of the best steampunk artists in Japan today, each with their own unique take on this genre, producing breathtaking and beautiful art. If you're into steampunk or just admire it, and you would love to get to know some more about it and look at some original amazing work and how it's made, even if you have no intention of ever making anything yourself, you will enjoy this. I'm totally thrilled with owning this book, and I believe that you will be also, so please check it out. It's on Amazon. So that's Steampunk Style by Mary Itadashi. Thank you. Here is a short reading of the second part of my new book, Octopus Pirate, by actress Rebel Medler.
As she hit the surface, she gasped for air. The ship was now a good way in front, the waves from its large engines producing a surge in current that rocked Catherine from side to side, desperately treading water. "Help!" she cried. But it was useless. A sudden realization reached her. No one knew she had fallen off the ship. No one was missing her. She had done her best to not socialize with the others. She had been aloof and not interested, almost sulking, as she was unhappy that she was expected to be there. She paddled harder and harder in the water, waving her arms desperately. She had heard that there were sharks in the area. Bloodthirsty sharks. She knew that thrashing around like this was not a good idea, and she would attract them. She thought again about her house, the nursery, the new colt, with yellow sheets and happy wallpaper. She thought briefly of her husband and longed for the safety of her mother's arms. As she watched the ship steam away, she knew it was hopeless. The sea was huge, vast. If they turned and came back to look for her, she would be like trying to find a pin in a haystack. She was not sure how long it would be before she was missed. Her husband as captain was busy. There was to be a grand dinner that evening. Being a perfectionist, he had taken it upon himself to arrange and oversee every small detail, from the flowers to food to the music. He would be rushed off his feet. An unkind glimmer of hope struck her. At the meal she would be missed. She wistfully imagined the large dining hall with thousands of candles, the fine white porcelain plates, the delicate exotic food, and the fragrant wine. Catherine's heart sank. Her legs and arms were getting tired. She tried to think what time it was. It must be around 3 in the afternoon, and dinner was 7 sharp. Quickly she did the sum in her head. 4 hours. She felt sure that she would be unable to paddle for 4 hours, even if she was not in her heavy pregnant condition. Suddenly she felt sad for her unborn child. It overwhelmed her, and she began to cry. The baby, the poor baby. It had been so longed and planned for. She felt a sudden pain. This was her first time as a mother, but she knew intuitively that was a contraction. She felt and knew that the baby was going to be born. Trying to calm herself, trying to dull the pain, she desperately looked out across the horizon. Nothing. The steamship was long gone. It had faded into the distance like a dream. Then a sudden calmness hit her, like an acceptance of her death. She stopped paddling and began to sink. Deeper and deeper, water started filling her lungs. Then she felt the pain again from inside her womb. The baby was coming, and it wanted to live.
I'm closing the cover on this show, and I just need to say thank you to everybody for tuning in and sharing, and also thank you to my amazing producer Douglas Coleman. With my first Octopus Pirate book published, I will be full steam ahead on the second book in the series, and as I need to be focusing on that, my Dusty Cover show will now be monthly, held on the last Thursday of each month, so please still all tune in. Thank you.